Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Tonight I'm up here messing with the C10 truck again a little bit more. Gonna try and start working on the front end, replacing the ball joints and tie rods and stuff on it, so that way we can get all the steering fixed. So hopefully in the next couple of days after we can get that straightened out, I can get the cab and all back on it, hopefully. But we're gonna work on that some tonight. I don't know exactly how much I'll get done tonight, but we'll see, and I'll take you along and show you some of the stuff. All right, I've done jacked it up, and this is an old jack that's not how I jacked it up. I jacked it with a floor jack, but I use this old jack because it's got a big base on it, so I use it like a jack stand. And I put it on the lower arm, so in just a little bit, when I go to beat the lower ball joint out, it'll be solid, so when I'm hitting on the ball joint with a hammer, it's actually putting all the jolt to the ball joint instead of bouncing around, so that way all the energy is going through the ball joint to help knock it out. But we're going to start by pulling the tire off, and then we'll pull the axle out, and then we'll start taking some of the other stuff off for the brakes and stuff, because we're changing upper ball joints, upper A-arms, lower ball joints, inner and outer tie rods, idler and pitman arm, and we're probably going to wind up doing sway bar end links and shocks too, but I don't have them at the moment. But we're just going to get most of the bigger parts changed on it, because putting shocks in or sway bar end links won't really take that much time. But it'd be nice to go ahead and get the lower ball joints in it and the new upper A-arms and stuff and the tie rods, because right now when I wrecked the truck, it's about stripped everything on the steering. So when you try and move the truck, it just lets I can't get it on the video, I don't think, but no, it ain't gonna let me get it on the video. But it's all but popped the joint out of the idler arm and the pitman arm. So when you try and move it, it kind of spreads out in the front, so it's really hard to move. So we're gonna try and get all this stuff straightened out, so then that way it'll be a little easier to move. So then we can get the cab back on it and move forward, because it'll be a lot easier doing the idler and pitman arm and taking the gearbox off and everything with no front clip on it, instead of fighting around everything. So, well, I don't know how much we're gonna get done tonight, because so far it's not going too swell, because we ain't even got the tire off yet. I got this little kit that's got all the different wheel locks in it, and none of them fit the locks in the wheel. And I don't know where the wheel lock key's at to take the lug nuts out. If I can't take the lug nuts out, I can't take the wheel off, so then I can't do none of the other stuff. So I guess I'm gonna keep looking for that, and if I can find it, then you'll see me back tonight on here videoing. Well, to you it won't make a difference. You'll see me working on it in just a second again anyways, but it'll either be tonight or in the morning, because I may have to go get another lug key, but hopefully I can find it tonight. All right, it's the next day. Old man come up here last night and showed me where the socket was in the toolbox. I was looking in the wrong drawer and couldn't find it. I forgot that it was a odd size, so it wasn't in the kit. And then my phone died, but I got most of it tore down on this side. Last night I still got to take the tie rods out, the idler arm and the pitman arm. But tore all the stuff out over here, beat the ball joint out, cut the old shock out, wire brushed everything and shot some paint on it, so that way we could put the new stuff back on there and it'd look nice. I'm going to tear this side down in just a few, but we wire brushed some more of the frame down both sides and got it all cleaned. and shot some paint on it. Drilled the other holes out. So now I just gotta put bolts in all of them. And we still gotta do some welding around that. That's why we didn't paint it. Now we gotta pull the springs off because we got new springs to put on it, and we'll be able to wire brush everything else behind it. And we're gonna cut that member out. And when it's cut out, we're gonna clean the inside of the frame before we weld the new tubes in. Got the new holes, or all the holes drilled right here, and the other one there, so we can put them bolts in. Gonna cut the 2 rivets on the bottom of this out, and it's supposed to be this bolt here goes through it to add extra strength. So we're gonna cut the 2 rivets out of it and move it under, so that way it's bolted back in like it's supposed to be, and then rebolt it to the frame. Welded, old man welded a little bit after we drilled the holes. So this is gonna be bolted in, and then, you know, they're welded all the way around too, so they should be plenty strong enough. But this morning, the goal for the day, get all the new stuff on this side, get the rest of the steering stuff in the center changed, get that side changed so then it's back rolling again, and put the bolts in the back. Got to finish wire brushing this section of the frame, wire brush it all, so then it can get some paint shot on it, and probably try and get the downpipe on it, and then some new loom on the chassis harness there, so that way it's all good and ready to go. But put the new downpipe on it, and it's got some old fuel lines in the center of this, real brittle, that'll wind up being a problem if we don't change them. But see, they're just, so we're gonna replace fuel lines, and I got a race plug to put in it. That way, you really need to put a race plug in them when you're doing them, because when you tune them, it bumps rail pressure up. When it bumps rail pressure up, that plug actually bleeds off. It senses the high pressure, and it's higher than what factory wanted it. So then it opens and lets it dump fuel pressure off. Well, after it's finally done that one time, it makes it easier and easier. So it does it constant. And then you'll be getting codes for low rail pressure. It puts it in limp mode, where that plug's like $10, and it just does away with the bypass. So it's just whatever rail pressure it's making is what it makes. It don't let it bleed off, and it don't hurt nothing. That's how all of them are that we've got. So I got the new plug for that. I'm gonna try and get most of the chassis stuff around the motor straightened up today, where it rolls on itself again, and a lot of stuff on the motor done, so we can push it back and put the cab back on the lift. So then I got a seam seal just a little bit on the bottom of it. I done some down the sides because we plated all that in. So some of that's been seam sealed. But underneath at the rockers and where the floor meets down there, I got to seam seal that. Then I can paint the firewall and underneath and the seam seal, so that way the white seam seal don't stand out. So that way that's all good. And then hopefully we can put the cab back on. That's hopefully the next day or so, the cab's back on there. So then we can hook some of the wires and stuff up and test a lot of the stuff on the inside to make sure that all the fan blower and everything still works, all our gauges, make sure all that stuff is good before the dash is actually 100% secured back in. And then when we know all that's good, then I'm gonna put the new carpet in it, the seats in it and stuff. But I really want to get it back on the frame so that way I can hook the wiring harness back up and test some stuff. Still got to make a plate to cover all this. I think I'm gonna just make it where it bolts on and then it's removable, because the windshield wiper stuff, I ordered it and it's back ordered, so it's gonna be just a little while before it's in. So we're gonna get the truck running, because we ain't really got time for it to just sit and wait on that. It's taking up too much room in the shop. So I'm gonna plate all that, and instead of welding it in, I'm just gonna make it where it bolts in, so then when the wiper stuff gets here, I can unbolt it all and make the wiper stuff work, and then it'll bolt back in. So if we ever have problems with the wiper motors or anything, it'll come back out so we can work on it easy. But I'm gonna start working on this thing some, and I'll update y'all in a few. All right, we're gonna put these arms together. New kryptonite arms, really beefy arms, good looking welds on them. Then it'll have a bolt in ball joint instead of a press in, and we'll have new bushings and stuff on it. And they got places for grease fitting, so you go to grease the bushings. Got pretty nice bushings. It's going to just like that. They're good and old up, so they push in good. And slide your pin through it. It ain't gonna slide because it's so tight, but just tap it in. The other one. We've used kryptonite on a lot of the diesels and stuff that we do. One thing for the fact of it, like the ball joints, that's a lower ball joint, and it really don't cost much more than buying one at the parts store. It'd be like $10 more or something for the lower. Now the upper arms, they make factory replacements, so if I was using the factory upper arms, you'd be able to use them. But they got nice boots on them, places for grease fittings, and the great thing about them is they got lifetime warranty on them. And we've run them on a lot of our stuff, and when they wear out, they ask you for a little video of them. So we just jack it up, show a little bit of movement if it's got it in it, and they'll send you a new one. So then it don't cost you. So it costs you a touch more when you first buy it, but nothing that you buy is going to last the lifetime of the vehicle when it comes to a joint that's turning constantly. I mean, you could do some of the stuff and do like the heim joint conversions and all, but then they're not going to be tight. They're going to wobble around, and they're going to wind up wearing out too. Where their ball joints, their tie rods, all that stuff, they got a lifetime warranty on it, and we sent several of them back off of different vehicles, and they always cover them and stuff. They've changed the boot design a lot on them. The boot was on the original ones, probably 5 or 6 years ago, it was smoother here. It didn't have the bump in it, and it was green, so it looked more kind of like the parts store boot that was just a one piece. and they would wind up still splitting. They kind of get dry rotted or something and split, and they would replace everything. They'd send you another boot and stuff too, but when they upgraded the boots, these boots are nowhere near as bad as them are. They last a lot longer. They don't dry rot. I mean, I guess it's because they got the extra bump, so then when, you know, it's all compressed in, it's got its movement instead of stressing everything else on it, like the other boots did. But that's just our preference, because like I said, they don't really cost much more than the ones from the parts store. They got a lifetime warranty on them, and we've always had good luck with them. All right. There's that. I mean, the upper one, I mean, it's a good looking ball joint, thick. All their stuff fits good when they're doing it. And I know all y'all don't want to watch this, and this is kind of boring, but just trying to get in the habit of videoing the stuff, so when we're doing the more interesting stuff, I'm actually videoing it. Like when we're cutting cabs up and everything. That way, I'm kind of in the habit of talking to the camera and videoing what I'm doing instead of just not doing it. All this stuff moved around. It comes with all the hardware, and like we've put these arms on a couple different trucks too. They make them for gas trucks, diesel trucks. We do a lot with Chevrolets. My truck that I drive, I didn't replace the upper arm. I actually just bought the drop-in ball joints for it, but they fit good. The splines are a little bit bigger on them when you're knocking them in, so you don't have issues with them trying to press themselves out after. You want to put the bolt in from the bottom. That way you ain't got clearance issues here with the spindle when it's going around. Trying to hold everything together right here. All right, but that's it. Locked all together. I'll tighten them down, and it's got 90-degree grease fittings for the top of the bushings up here. So then that way when they're bolted in the truck, you gotta mess with it for a second to get it started. Anything ain't want to cooperate with me, that's for sure. There it goes. So I'll have to tighten it down, but that way when it's in the truck and the shackle's here, you'll be able to get to it, degrease it and all. But that's it. I'm gonna tighten these down, get the grease fittings and everything, and do the exact same thing on the other one. And then we'll be back over at the truck. All right, there's both of them bolted together now. Got all the new bushings in them. The grease fittings are all clocked. The grease fittings and the ball joints are tight out here. The only thing that we haven't put in them is they come with bump stops. They go on Goes right there and bolts up. But I'm gonna put them on the truck and see how much room we got, because I think we're gonna have so much room it's gonna be kind of, it ain't gonna really need them, but because we're not gonna be real low and it ain't got that brace there now, so we'll just stick them on there and see how it looks, because it's got the bump stop on the lower arm on this truck, so I don't really think it's gonna need the upper one, but we'll see. But there's both of them put together. But now we'll go back over to the truck. All right, we're back over here at the truck. I'm getting ready to start putting it all back together. You know, I just unbolted the upper arms and took them out because they're in pretty rough shape. The bushings are bad on it, and the ball joints are welded on, so we're going to be getting new bushings and the bolt-on ball joints instead of the press-on ones that wanted to come out. When you're doing this on a 2500, 3500 truck, 1500s ain't as bad, but you got your ball joint tools, and you will destroy them tools if you just take that tool and that ball joint's been in that truck for a long time, and you stick that tool on there and you stick impact on it and you just hammer on it. It's gonna fold. I've had them strip the threads out and we've bent them in half. All right. The thread thing, keep it sprayed a lot with oil. And that helps a lot on that. But the spreading part, because that thing, you know, you're messing with an old truck that's rusty or something, that thing does not want to come out. And you put that tool on there and you start hammering on it, well, it spreads it. The best way to take them lower ones out, because they press in from the bottom, so you drive them downwards, is take your hammer and beat on it. And, you know, well on it pretty good. And you'll feel it starting to move, and then you keep hitting it. And I always just stick a box underneath it. This is my little box. It's got all the ball joints in it that I've changed the last little bit. That way it don't slam into the floor and chip the concrete up, but I'll beat them out. The uppers, when, say you're using the factory arm, and you know, it's bolted in here, so that way it's there. All right. Well, that arm, if you're gonna change this ball joint, see, it presses this way. And them tools last a long time if you ain't putting them in binds. Putting stuff in, they work great. Taking small cars apart, they work great. But these uppers, I'll take and run the nut off and then start it back. And before I break the ball joint loose from the spindle, before I break it loose from the top of the spindle here, it'll still be seated in the spindle, but I'll have the nut on the bottom loose. Then I'll take, a lot of these have C-clips on the bottom. There'll be a C-clip in here somewhere. Some of them don't have it. But then when it's there, have the truck jacked up or have it on a jack stand like that, so the weight is on the arm, so it's got the truck sagging in the middle instead of drooping, the sides drooping down. And when it's up there, you take this arm and take your hammer and hit on the arm back and forth, and you know, hit it pretty good. And what it's going to do, it's going to do two things. It's going to break this ball joint loose out of this arm, so it's going to start coming up. So then, being it's broke loose, that tool right there, take it right out, no problem. And you won't tear the tool up, so the tool lasts a long time. Second thing, more than likely, when you're beating on that thing, it's going to break that loose. And when it starts breaking it loose, I'll still hit it a couple more times. And most of the time, you won't have to take the pickle fork and go in the bottom down here and break it loose, because when you're beating on it here, it's breaking that loose. And then the jolting, being that nut still started down here, it'll wind up breaking that loose too. So then you'll be able to just run the nut loose and pick the arm up, put your tool on there, take the ball joint out. That's just, I'm not saying that's the best way to do it. That's just the way that I do it on most things. The lower ones, pretty much all of them that I do, I beat them out. I never use the tool to press them out because, like I said, we destroyed tons of them tools. And I got where we was just doing the rental tool thing and using them all the time. But then, you know, so that way when you're doing it, because it'd work good for one set of ball joints or something, and then, you know, you get the next truck and then that's when it would spread. So we'd just do the rental tool, so then that way you didn't have it all the time. But that one there, since I've started doing them, like I just said, that tool right there has probably changed at, dang, it's probably done at least 25 to 50 ball joints with that tool. Where before I started doing them that way, you might do 4 ball joints on these bigger trucks. Now, like I said, the little cars and little trucks, it'd knock them right out. It wouldn't be no problem. But most of the stuff that I work on are 25, 35 trucks. So, you know, they're ton trucks or diesels and everything. So the ball joints and stuff are a lot bigger in them. So, you know, they're stuck good. But like I said, beat it out with a hammer, you'll see it start moving. I've had some of them that was so stuck that I beat on them, and it would take that lip right there and it'll flatten it down. And so then, you know, you're getting where you can't really hit because that's sticking up, so that's what you're beating on. But when it mushrooms it down where it ain't really got much, I've had to put a 3/4 nut on the top of it and weld it to it, so then that way I had that to beat on to finally ever get them broke loose. But that's some rusty stuff. You know, you go to messing with something that's 01 model, 02 model, and it's been rusty, you know, and ain't ever been changed because they just been worked and not kept up. Them are the worst ones to get out. But I'm gonna set the tool up and we're gonna press the lower ball joint back in and then bolt the new upper A-arm in. All right, when you put it in there, before you start pressing on it, take your hammer and tap the tool around until it looks pretty straight, because if you start pushing it crooked, you're just gonna fight it the whole way. And the other thing, I should have showed you before I put the tool in here, but I can show you afterwards. There's a little dimple in this thing, and you can see a little dimple right there. Make sure you line your grease fitting up with it, because if you put it the wrong way, you ain't gonna be able to put grease in it. So make sure you line it up. And like I said, you can use the impact, but I just use a ratchet because then I can tell how much I'm pushing and it helps the tool a lot. And I'll start tightening it down and watching it as I'm tightening, making sure that it's starting straight, because you want to really make sure that it starts straight, because then it'll make everything else so much easier. Then when I'm tightening down, if it gets really tight, I'll take stop with the ratchet, pick the ratchet up, and take the hammer and bump on this a couple times. And by doing that, where it's got tension on it, it's like it's starting to separate some. And when you beat on that with a tension, it'll suck that ball joint up some. Then you can tighten it down. If you're messing with one that's really fighting you, some of them's gonna go right in, some of them's gonna fight you the entire way. But make sure that you got it pretty straight before you start, or you're gonna make it fight you the whole way. And I always turn the tool where the side of the tool hits the arm, so when you're tightening, it's holding the tool. But I'm gonna go ahead and crank it down and then we'll be back. All right, you can see it's going in pretty straight, and it was going, so then, you know, it's tight now. Just take the hammer, tap on it a couple times, and then it tightens up some more. And you want to hit it a little harder if it's not wanting to move. Sometimes you can tap, if you can't hit good this way, you can hit up here like I was saying, but just watch it and make sure that you don't mess up, so that way your socket don't want to go on and off. But I'm going to finish putting this thing in. And see, it's all but up now. But it ain't gonna go that last little bit. I'm gonna have to back it off and put a spacer here, because now the top of the ball joint is hitting the holder for the top, and the height of everything to start with makes it where you can't put a spacer in it to start with. So you have to tighten it down and then put the spacer in it. So we're gonna put the spacer in it, do that last little bit, and that ball joint will be done. All right, well, I thought that I had started videoing when I put the spacer back on there, but it wasn't videoing. But I couldn't find the spacer, so I just used the bearing race to go up there. So then the cup would go on it. So then it'd let the ball joint go up in it, but it's all the way up now. And that's the grease fitting that I was talking about lining up, so that way you'll be able to put grease in it. So the bottom's done now. I'm going to get the upper arm and bring it over here so we can bolt it on, so then we can put the spindle back on. All right, well, I was wrong. It needs the little bumps on there because it's got a pedestal right there for it to hit on that one, and then the lower one's got one there too. So I guess that don't let it go down far enough, and then the other one keeps it from going up too high. So I've put it on now, so it's on there. So now we're gonna put the bolts in it and get the A-arm hanging up there. All right, we got all the stuff pretty much on over here. Got new calipers because the old calipers where they've been sitting, they wouldn't press in. So we just went ahead and replaced both of them. Got the new arm and stuff on it. Put new shocks on it because the old shocks was, they didn't want to come back out, and I had to cut the bolt off to get them out. Got the new inner and outer tie rods on it. I have new sway bar end links to put on it, but you have to put the axle in. Put the axle in before you put the sway bar end links on, and I want to change the front diff because it's busted from where the truck was wrecked. So I'm gonna drop that front diff out and put the new one in. Then the axles will go in, then the sway bar end links will go on. So that's kind of at a stop until I do the sway bar end links. We cleaned up on the frame down through there. I can't remember if that was at the beginning of this video, or I don't remember if I videoed that or not, but all that's cleaned up and painted. We tore everything down over here, wire brushed the frame out, painted it, let it set, painted the spindle, put a new caliper on this side too, put the new arms in it. Had to replace that bolt. I had to get pulled out of another truck in the woods because the bolt was pitted pretty bad, so I just went in and changed it. And the same thing on this side, put a new shock, new inner and outer tie rod, new lower ball joint. I got the sway bar end link for this side too, but the axle's doing the same thing over here that it's got to do on that side. Old man's been messing back here some. He put the tube in the back. It's still got to be finished welded out and everything, but it was in there. So now we can cut, and we got that, and we're gonna take our measurement, make sure all that's good. Cut this out so it'll be gone. And the truck's getting a fifth wheel or a gooseneck ball put back on it, so I'm gonna put that in here, the gooseneck ball, to make sure that that's not going to interfere, because it's a B&W turnover, so it's a whole piece that goes across. But put it on there and make sure where I'm gonna put this cross member at ain't gonna affect none of that. I'm gonna measure, how I'm gonna determine that, I'm gonna measure from that point 6.5 inches forward, because that's what we moved the whole rear end 6.5 inches forward. So we're gonna measure from there 6.5 inches forward, and that'll tell me where that shock bracket's got to be. So then we'll go back just a little bit and put our tube across, and then put the ears off of it, so that way that shock will bolt in there. But it'll be, I don't know if we're gonna put another piece of C-channel up here, or if we're gonna put a piece of square tube. I don't know which one he's got in mind to do up here yet. But then this all be gone, so we'll be able to do like I said, and we're gonna put a big air tank in there, air compressor will go in there, stuff like that. It may wind up with a battery back here too, with the wires running to the alternator, so that way it's got another auxiliary battery back here. So then I can put a plug off the back. So when I'm using the trailer with the winch and stuff, I'll just be able to plug it up and there's a battery there too, instead of just running off the front ones and having so much wire, so that way it ain't getting as hot, because the draw will be off the battery, so it'll be here. Instead of drawing all the way to the front of the truck, it'll have this middle point, because that'll be charging the battery, and then the battery will be taking the hit of that. I think we showed that we done drilled the frame, the holes in the frame for the A-arm. That's all been cleaned up underneath. It don't look it now because dirty, it's real dusty, but it's done been wire brushed underneath for the gas tank to go in. And I pulled the sending unit out of the gas tank. Let's see here, it's over here. Pulled the old sending unit out of the gas tank, out of the short bed gas tank, because this wrong plug and it's kind of rusty and the piece is broken there, so it wouldn't work right. But and I'll pull that sending unit out because it'll have the right plug and all, because it's for the one out of the long bed tank, and we'll put it in the short bed tank. And I've pulled the thing out of it and pumped most of the fuel out of it already. Got just a little bit more, and then we'll clean the inside of it, clean the outside so it's all clean. Put the new sending unit in it, and then we'll put it on the truck. After I'm waiting for them to come in, new U-bolts for the rear end, because we're changing the springs. So I'm gonna put new U-bolts, because these are bad about rusting out the way they pocket on the bottom. They got a little pocket down there so it holds dirt, and all this in here I have to be wire brushed and cleaned up too. But got new U-bolts on the way, so when we go to change the loose springs and the U-bolts, I'm gonna hook the brake line, roll the whole rear end out. We'll clean it up and repaint it and all, so then when we put it back in, it'd be a lot better than crawling under the truck trying to clean it. But trying to get a little bit more done. I guess I'm gonna go ahead and take the factory downpipe off and put the aftermarket downpipe on it, so that way that'll be took care of. And then I guess we'll go from there on how much more I want to do on this video. Been real busy on a bunch of customer stuff, so this has kind of not been able to be worked on like we was wanting. But I guess I'm gonna go ahead and change this, and then we'll see on what time it is, because it's late in the evening. So I don't know how late I'm gonna stay up here tonight. So I guess we'll figure out what else is gonna get done, but we're at least gonna do the downpipe. All right, when you're doing these on the LB7, they're different than like the LOY, LMM, LBZs. They all got a bang clamp on it. These have bolts all around it. So you take the dust shield off, and it's like 4 bolts. And then you can get an impact on every one of these when they're in the open. Down. It's there for this one right here. And you can't put a socket on it. And if you put a wrench on there and you beat on it, it strips it out. So you got to clamp it with vice grips and beat on it. In the truck, when you're doing it with the cab and all, you know, everything's super tight, but you fight the dust shield out, and you can get these with a ratchet, and you'll beat on them, pull on them, beat on them, however you got to do it. And you can get them here. Sometimes, if you can't break them loose, on that side, right past the brake booster, or right by the hydro boost, there's a brace for the fender, and you hook a ratchet strap to it, and hook the ratchet strap to this and jack it, and it'll normally break it loose. This one down here, normally you get your vice grips here. You got heater hoses right here, but you can normally still beat on it to get it broke loose. But It's not fun in the truck, but it's doable. It's a lot easier when it's in the open. Good thing about it, this one that I'm taking loose and one on the other side are studs. The rest of them are bolts. So you'll have 2 studs to be able to set it back on so it holds it. But I'm gonna go ahead and finish taking it off. All right, I finished taking the bolts out, and I figured before I put the new one on, it's full of oil from where the truck was upside down, so it dumped oil in the turbo. It all burned out when it's after we run it for a little while. But you can see, I'll try and get this so you can. That part really don't look a whole lot different on aftermarket ones. But if you look at the sides, see how flat they get that versus staying just a round pipe where it nakes it down so much right there. We'll see in just a second how this one's gonna go. Sometimes they bolt right on, everything clears good. Sometimes you got to put a little dent here to clear the up pipe so you don't hit it. Sometimes it clears good there, and then the dipstick tube sometimes wants to touch it. Normally if it's the dipstick tube wanting to touch it, you can kind of bend the tube a little bit, and when it bolts it clears it all. But I'm gonna wipe the oil and stuff on the back and hang that new pipe up there, and we'll see if it's gonna clear or not. All right, I put the bolts in it and snugged it up just to see before I get everything tight. But everything, it's hard to see on the camera, but there's actually plenty of clearance on this one. So I ain't got a bead on it none on that side. So now we're gonna see how the dipstick tube fits to see if we're gonna have to beat it on this side. All right, well, I started them bolts too. It was actually touching here, and I just put my hand down here and held it and grabbed the top and pulled out just a little bit and got just enough clearance there for it. So it ain't hitting or nothing there now, so it'll all be good. Now I'll take it back off, pull this off, put the new gasket, because I still got the old gasket on it right now, and then put all the bolts and tighten them down, and then tighten all that down. So then all that'll be straightened out, and it'll have the downpipe on it. But I think that's gonna do it all for this video, because it's getting kind of late, and I didn't get to work on this truck as much as I was wanting to. I was hoping there'd be more progress on this video, but we got the front end done, we got the downpipe on it, got all the holes drilled in the frame, side of the frame wire brushed, started boxing the back end so we can cut that brace out. So I mean, we got some stuff done. Hopefully next week I'll be able to have the cab and stuff on it by the time I put a video out next week. Maybe, hopefully I'll be putting the cab and stuff on it, because it kind of needs to move on, because I need to get it on out of here. But thank y'all for watching, and I'll see y'all next week.